Well, hello, puppers, and welcome to a special Pupcorn Movies. All right, so this is a movie that has been on the list of God, I hope she enjoys this movie.
Yeah.
But when you talk about this movie to prepare someone to watch it, it's very easy for someone to be like, I might not be into this.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about The Prince of Egypt, a Dreamworks animation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a movie that is based off the story of Moses. And a biblical story can be very, what's the word?
Preachy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that can be a very concerning notion for a lot of people.
I was worried mainly because growing up, preachiness was a huge part of my childhood.
Yeah.
So when you were like, hey, let's watch The Prince of Egypt, it's about Moses, I was just kind of like, I mean, do we have to?
Yeah, a lot of religious films can easily just fall into that preachy trap. And it's very difficult to be like, it's not preachy, trust me.
Yeah.
You gotta go on my word on this.
I think what made it easier actually is because it's Old Testament.
Okay.
So I feel like Old Testament is a lot less preachy than the New Testament.
Interesting.
That's a personal opinion. There's no facts to back that up. Other than my own life experiences and personal experiences. So, anyway, the movie.
Yeah.
You didn't hype it up, but you were like, listen, it's a really good movie. And I asked, hey,
it's a movie that
is it gonna be like, change your religion? And you said no. So I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot.
It's a movie that has so many layers that are working for it.
Oh, yeah.
But I won't deny that faith is one of the layers, but it's not the only layer. So, there is faith. There is religion.
One thing that
but
I
there's
really...
also layers of, family and
brotherhood and just guilt is a huge theme.
Mm-hmm.
Regret. So there is a lot. But even, though faith is one of the main themes... It's not change your religion. It's, hey, it feels more about destiny than faith.
Mm-hmm.
So to recap, for anyone who doesn't know the story of Moses, it was in Egypt during the time of Ramses.
Mm-hmm.
And they were killing off all of the babies, specifically male babies.
So I looked it up. His father is named Seti. Seti is the one that's killing the babies at the start of the movie.
Okay.
Pharaoh Seti. And Ramses comes in later.
Okay. Well, anyway, they're killing off all of the baby boys because they don't want to be usurped. So Moses' mother puts him in a basket, sends him down the Nile River, where he is found by a group of Egyptian women that take him in, and they raise him as Egyptian. So, and then he finds out later that he is not Egyptian. He is actually Jewish, and decides to leave the Egyptian faith, I guess, and kind of discover himself. So he leaves and wanders the desert, and then
He's found by the Hebrew God.
Yeah, and he eventually finds faith. So, and then he goes back to Egypt to free the slaves, the Jewish slaves in Egypt. So that's the story, parts of the Red Seas, all that jazz, Ten Commandments. Just for anyone who
follows that quite faithfully.
Yeah, but just for anyone who may not have grown up religious or had any type of religious teaching, which is 1,000% fine. It's that story.
Yep.
So.
And we have a very strong cast giving us this story as well. We have Val Kilmer, who most people know as Batman in Batman Forever.
Okay.
And also done a couple mafia movies, but Val Kilmer is the voice of Moses.
Okay.
Ralph Fiennes is Ramesses.
Okay.
Michelle Pfeiffer is Zipporah, who becomes Moses' wife. Sandra Bullock is Miriam, who is Moses' sister.
Okay.
Yeah. Jeff Goldblum is Aaron.
Freaking love him. I had no idea. You were like, so do you know who that guy is? And I was like, it's his brother. You were like, Jeff motherfucking Goldblum. I was like, oh, dang. Okay.
Danny Glover is Zipporah's father.
Nice.
And like, then we have the two priests, Hotep and Hoy, I think, is Steve Martin
Oh my God.
and Martin
yes.
Short.
Okay. I think not only the cast was just excellently done, but for me it was the animation. So
The animation
while
and the
they
music
had
excels this movie for
a
me.
phenomenal cast, that the acting was just spot on, that paired with the animation was just breathtaking.
There are a lot of shots that I think would just make beautiful wallpaper, and this movie has some of my favorite shots in animation history.
Oh yeah.
Just things that you can pause and be like, how the fuck did they do that?
Yeah, just it really was just spectacularly done. The art is breathtaking. So even though the cast is such a huge part, the animators definitely knocked it out of the park.
Well, what's interesting
So
is
much
like,
emotion,
this was one
like-
of DreamWorks' earlier films.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that like for me, it's still like their top dog.
Yeah.
I know I love like the Kung Fu Panda movies, How to Train Your Dragon.
I think too,
the Shrek
like
movies,
it's a
but, like,
personal
Prince of Egypt
thing
is in a
because
league of its own.
it's 2D animation. So I do feel like that personally has a lot of benefits because you can get more out of a 2D animation than like the 3D kind of modeled rendering CG.
Possibly.
Like the movement isn't as difficult. Like if you have a 3D animated thing and the shadows are wrong, it's just like, what is going on there? Whereas 2D, if there's a shadow wrong, it's not quite as noticeable because the field of depth is different.
Okay.
Depth of field, sorry.
The Field of Death.
But there was just so much emotion captured in their faces and the body language and the movements. And I mean, Moses and Ramsey's relationship,
Yeah, I like how this is played as a drama.
it was
I really
heart-wrenching.
do. Yeah.
Because at the beginning we have Moses and Ramses riding chariots through Egypt.
And
through
they're
the
very
pyramids.
much brothers.
Oh yeah, they're
Like-
like
Moses is the prankster.
trying to knock each other off their chariots and
And
who can
Ramses
get there
is
first,
just
who
like,
can
oh,
go
what the hell, I'll
faster,
go
and
along, but he takes all the blame.
yeah. So because the thing is, Ramses is the next in line to be Pharaoh, and he's not acting like it.
Exactly.
So, and then even after he gets in trouble, Moses goes and he's like, this was my fault. Like, I'm who did this. And he's just kind of dismissed. So you have that dynamic of like the golden child versus the one that's just trying to lighten the mood.
Exactly.
So, and I think that's a really relatable
It also
dynamic.
does some like brilliant foreshadowing of like the second half of the movie.
Oh yeah.
And why Ramses is so stubborn and why that. Because
Yeah.
there's a line very early on because you don't see much of Seti. You're aware of what he does, but like he's what sets forth like all the conflict, but the movie does a fantastic job of still making him a loving father,
Yeah.
which is very important because it allows more of that moral struggle between Moses the Egyptian and Moses the Hebrew.
Right. But I also think status plays a big part into this. It's not just revolving around faith. Especially for Ramses. He's not necessarily concerned about the faith at all. He's just like, oh, those are poor people. They're slaves, like whatever.
Yes.
So it's not like, oh, they're a different religion than me, so whatever.
Exactly.
He's quite literally like, no, they're poor.
Yes.
So I think that also really helps making it a lot less preachy when it comes to the faith, because the faith itself, even though that is literally what the story is about, doesn't really come up too terribly much.
No, it says what it needs to say and then it gets out.
Yeah.
Which I think is very important because you have all these elements that like if it got too preachy,
then it's,
I think
it starts
its
to
target
like,
audiences would like it.
But
outside that, it would just be an immediate turnoff, which is a shame because it's such a gorgeous movie.
Oh yeah. But quite honestly,
like that it's like very dark.
Yeah, it is. It is really dark.
It is not afraid to shy away from like the intense scenes.
We
are
going to get into
heart-wrenching drama.
I guess spoilers, which if you are familiar with the story, it's not really spoilers. But if you're just watching it as like a film to watch, it could be considered a spoiler. Mm-hmm. But the relationship between Ramses and Moses, I love because it's not black and white. There is so much gray in their relationship, and you can tell how much they love each other even after finding out that they are not blood-related brothers.
Ramses is one of my favorite examples of a sympathetic villain done right.
Yeah.
Because you know exactly where he's coming from. You know why he's doing it.
Well, it's also he's still selfish about it.
He's also not being redeemed.
He's still selfish about it.
Exactly.
So what happens is like when Moses comes back and he's like, hey, like, brother, you gotta let my people go. They don't belong here. What you're doing is wrong, and our God is really pissed off about it. And
it's such a beautiful moment when he hugs Moses and he's like, Ramses, look at you, you look great.
Yeah.
Because you know, especially if you're familiar with the story, what's about to happen.
Yeah.
So you're like, aw, they're happy to see each other, but this cannot
It's so
last.
bittersweet because you can tell how much they mean to one another, but they can't bend to meet each other. It just isn't going to work based off of their religion, based off of their status, based off of their own inner turmoil of like Ramses being told like he's going to be the failure pharaoh, basically. Yep. Like he's just going to destroy everything that was built up. So he's got that in his head that he has to do everything exactly right and perfect all the time so that he doesn't fail as a pharaoh. So he's not willing to make any of those bends.
But I love how like that's not only evident in the writing, but the animation,
and the music.
You can just see shots where like you see Seti's pharaoh and then you see Ramses' pharaoh.
Yeah.
He wants to be bigger. He wants to be better. He refuses to be the weak link, not just in dialogue, but like every shot you see,
everything
he's trying to one up his dad.
Everything he does is to be bigger, to be better, to prove himself. And
that obsession makes him such a compelling villain.
Oh yeah. And what I love is like he wants to basically hurt everyone around him except for his brother because he's selfish and he still loves his brother. Yep. So sorry, the cat is scratching on the scratching post, so you might hear weird like crunching noises. That's just her. And I don't want to yell at her because she usually scratches the carpet.
If you're new to Pupcorn, this is very common. If you're not new to Pupcorn, it's one of the cats. Yep.
Yeah.
Puppies.
But I really love that he's so selfish and he doesn't want to hurt anyone that is close to him. And in doing that, that's all he hurts.
Yes, exactly.
Are those close to him. So he refuses to bend and let any of the slaves go because they're poor, they have to be there, or else who's going to build, the pyramids and such. And in not listening, his son is lost, his family is lost, his brother is lost, his kingdom is lost. Like, it just is so well put together.
Yep. Let's talk about the music.
Go for it.
Holy shit, the music. So the score is done by Hans Zimmer, who also worked on The Lion King. He's worked on, after the fact, the Nolan Batman movie. Yeah. So, like, he's a big composer.
He's also Pirates of the Caribbean, I believe.
Yes, Pirates of the Caribbean, yep. He did those movies. For Prince of Egypt, he has a very, like, phenomenal score. Now, I don't remember who the lyricist is. I'm going to have that put up in the editing because I want to say Stephen Summers, but I couldn't be wrong.
My phone is dead.
But, like, these songs are just as powerful as the script. Like, they don't feel just thrown in.
Right.
They are part of the drama. They are part of the story. Like, Deliver Us is very powerful in its lyrics and its visuals.
Yeah.
Like, it really sets the tone for this movie. Like, sure, it's animation, but, like, it feels like a Ghibli film half the time.
Yeah.
It's treating its audience very maturely and seriously. And yeah, there are some, like, small gags sprinkled in, but that's because when it hits hard, it does not pull its punches.
Even those small gags are dark, because it's the two priests, right? That are like the gag characters. They're supposed to be the funny ones.
For the most part. There's also a couple little gags, like when Moses is dehydrating and he drinks the water and the sheep is just like, brrr.
Oh, yeah.
You can't really say even that's a little dark. No, that's some levity.
No, that is a little bit of levity. But like the priests are, I would say, typically like the main goofy characters.
Yes.
Like, I mean, if you think about it,
Sinister comic relief.
every goofy character has those two same like typecast characters, which is really funny because it's actually the same as you and I. And I'll explain that. Okay. So you always have the one that's like really tall and skinny and just kind of like, I'm gonna get you. And then you have like the short, plump one that's like, he's gonna get you. Like, think about it. You have these two priests. You have Timon and Pumbaa. You have Pain and Panic. You have the raccoon and the hummingbird and Pocahontas. So like, So
all
like,
right.
it's just a really common theme that when you see
Jasper and Horace.
when you see the really tall, skinny character and the short, super plump character, you're like, they're gonna be the comic element.
Okay.
Not to say that they don't bring anything to the story, because in most cases they all definitely do, but they're going to be the ones you look to whenever it's like, okay, something funny is going to happen.
Okay.
Typically.
Okay.
So, but even their like comic relief is really dark.
Yes.
So, like when the river turns to blood. You know, they're like, we can do that too.
By the power of Ra. There you go.
So like, it's still really dark, but funny, I guess.
I'd say the only other like comic relief was Aaron. Not just because he's played by Jeff Goldblum, but it's a very like depressing kind of like, well, that makes everything better.
Yeah. So to give you kind of an idea of Aaron's character, he is Moses' older brother, which I did do some research because I was very confused. And I was like, it's the firstborn son is the one that's getting taken.
Yes.
So why is it Moses and not Aaron? Apparently they have different fathers.
Right.
So, it was the thing. But I was like, excuse me. Anywho, he is not necessarily willing to forgive Moses and to love him, which I think is a really, really interesting comparison, because you have the blood is thicker than water theory here.
Yep.
Where Moses and Ramses are thick as thieves, love each other, they are brothers.
Yes.
They're not related technically at all.
Right.
And then you have Moses and Aaron that are blood-related brothers and can't get along. You have Aaron that just can't forgive him for everything that he's done because he's been, a quote-unquote Egyptian.
Yep.
And really put them through everything that they've dealt with their entire lives, and he just isn't gonna let that go.
Right. It's not until like the very end and it's very important that he is the first character to follow Moses into the parting of the Red Sea.
So, and that, to me, the paradigm there is really, really cool, because that's the moment where the blood is thicker than the water. So where Aaron follows Moses into the parted sea, and then you have Ramses get destroyed in the sea. So it's just kind of like...
We even got to have an infamous, and like Ralph Fiennes is very famous for being Voldemort in the Harry Potter movies. But this was before, so you heard it. I was just like, there he is. Someone in the studio said, I want that dude for Harry Potter.
Like, that guy's going places. So I try, whenever we're watching a movie, if I'm really loving the movie, I tend to be much quieter.
Yeah, I'm starting to gather that, because I was pretty nervous with this one.
So, and it's like every now and then I'll like give my 2 cents or like crack a joke or something, put my little commentary in. But for the most part, I'm pretty quiet if I'm enjoying the movie, because I'm really taking everything in with how well every aspect works together. And the part where Moses has parted the Red Sea, I think was the first point that I vocalized while we were watching. I was like, this movie has no right to be as beautiful as it is.
Yep.
Like, Because there's the moment, and it's the scene that you were talking about is your favorite scene in the movie, where
one of them, yeah.
The water is like in the background. So they're walking through basically a tunnel inside the water.
Yep.
And I think it's lightning.
Yes.
Strikes, and it illuminates, it like backlights the water, and you see like the fish and the whales and like all of the sea life in the water. And then you have all the people walking in front of it.
Yep.
And it is so beautiful. Like, it's just aesthetically, beautiful, not even like including the meaning and the music and the story. Like, the actual image is just really pretty.
Yeah, I'd want that picture framed, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, there are some frames of animation that I'd love, like, hanging in my house. That is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. The other part that I just absolutely loved, we're going to kind of go back a little bit.
That's okay.
Is when he talks to the burning bush.
Thank you. I was about to get there. Yes. I love how they depicted it as a very warm and welcoming.
It's warm, it's welcoming,
depiction.
But you also have the aspect of unyielding faith mixed with question.
Okay.
Which is something growing, again, if you've ever listened to our commentary, I do talk about being raised Catholic a lot. So everything that I mention is based off personal experience without any type of supporting evidence.
Gotcha.
Because that's not the point of why I share that. But growing up Catholic, we were always taught, like, don't question. You just believe. You don't question these things.
Yeah.
And I learned very quickly it's mainly because they don't have answers. So if you ask questions that there's no answers to, adults tend to feel really uncomfortable. So instead of just saying, I don't know, it's, we don't ask questions. And I hated that growing up. I'm like, what do you mean don't ask questions? Like, that's... I have questions.
Right, exactly.
So I really love that in this depiction, when Moses meets the burning bush, he is hesitant. There is questions. He is like, I don't understand. And to me, that's such a beautiful moment that it's warm, it's welcoming, it's inviting. And he has, even though he has all these questions, he goes anyway.
Yeah.
And to me, that's more appealing than just being like, don't ask questions. Is the warmth of like, I understand you have questions. In time, you will understand.
Yep.
So as opposed to like, just don't ask.
Yeah.
Not to mention the animation of the burning bush. I really like how they did that. It was more like glowy.
Yep, that's very beautiful. And then the scene after that, I love how many scenes give so much emotion, add so much to the story without a single line of dialogue.
Oh, when he's talking to his wife,
explaining what he just saw to
I love
his
when he
wife.
holds up his shoe.
I
had to take my
and
sandals
it's just
off.
the animation taking off. There's another scene.
And I believe it's just their silhouettes too. You just see either like it's light.
You see them through like the window
of
like the place they're living, or like through the tent. So it's like from the outside looking in.
It's not up close.
Right. Exactly. And like you just see them like explaining, and the animation is just going ham, and the music swells, and I'm just like, God, this is so good. There's another scene later on when Moses returns the ring to Ramesses, and you see Ramesses go through all of the emotions.
He goes through the eight forms of grief.
Basically, but not just that, but you see Ramesses the brother go to sleep, and Ramesses the Pharaoh awaken.
Yeah.
Because when those eyes close and then awaken, he's set on
He's a
his
different
goal.
person.
Yeah, he's a different person. And I'm just like, God, this movie.
But I mean, there's so many subtle lessons, I guess, in this film. And the more that we talk about it, the more that I can recall and kind of see and pick out and understand. Because even in that moment, because that's the moment Moses goes and he looks at Ramses' son, and he's like, you have to change your ways. Like, do this for your child. And Ramses is like, no, like, nothing's going to happen. We'll be fine. And you see kind of the cruelness of the child towards Moses.
Yeah.
Of like, Father, why is he here? What is he doing here?
That's towards the end of the film. I'm talking about the scene when he hands the ring over after playing with the big boys.
Oh,
it's
okay.
this whole show, and Ramesses
Yeah.
like, what's this really about? And Moses tells him, what's this really about? And he's just like, oh, so you didn't come back for me, you came back for them. And he's like, I'm sorry. And he returns the ring. The ring that Ramesses gave him towards the beginning of the film, where it made him like lead
he was a part of like the higher
chief architect, I
yeah.
think it was. He was like appointed that position, so it meant a big deal to both Moses and Ramesses. And for him to be like, this is not important anymore,
yeah.
I don't want this, changed Ramesses.
Yeah.
You're talking about the scene after all the plagues,
right?
When
and he
the
goes,
son blames him.
Yeah. I really love that moment because you see the cruelness from the son towards Moses.
Mm-hmm.
And all Moses has is love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do this for your kid. Do this for my nephew.
Yeah.
And then the kid dies. And you just, like, it's so heartbreaking.
Do we want to talk about that scene? Like the angel of death?
Oh,
It is fantastic.
I had chills the whole time.
Scary. Like, it scared the shit out of me as a kid.
Just
like, there's something so beautiful about it. It's
I
so
love
haunting.
I love that in the beginning, when they're killing the firstborn,
because most of the plagues are done through a musical number.
They're going
a beautiful musical number, but like.
But even so, when the movie opens and they're killing all the firstborns, you have this animation of guards dragging women by their hair, ripping babies from their arms, and like throwing them into the Nile, and they're being shredded by crocodiles, and just them stabbing and killing, and it's very bloody and it's very barbaric.
Hinted at bloody. They show no blood and they show no
shred.
Yeah,
no, it's kind of
implied.
It's like the animation is done like hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
So they're like moving hieroglyphs. It's really cool, honestly. It's a very cool animation. It gets its point across.
It's mostly CG, which is like, it's the one thing where like, if I'm just like, there's the CG.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's really cool. It's really cool done. I like that part. But then you have the death of the firstborn son towards the end
of the Egyptians.
It's very kind.
Yeah.
So it happens at night when everyone is asleep. It's not painful. It's very subtle. It's like, it's a kindness. Okay. It's like, if you think like, I don't know if anyone is as morbid as me, but when I'm like, okay, like when I die, I really hope I just go to sleep.
Yeah.
There's no pain, there's no struggle, there's no, big impending sadness, that it's just, you go to sleep and that's that.
Yeah.
Versus like, I hope I die like my grandpa, not like the passengers in his car. Like, one of those situations.
I got you.
So I love the parallel between that. The one was so ruthless and done out of fear. And then the other one was like, I'm so sorry this has to happen.
Yeah.
And it was just so calm the whole that's what made it to me so creepy.
Yep.
Because you're expecting this bloodbath like in the beginning.
There's no music. There's no music. You just have the sound
of like the light
the light
going
itself.
back and forth. And then you hear like the final breath of the person dying. And then at the end, you hear the mourning of like people waking up and the crying and,
throughout.
Yeah.
Like, even while Ramesses is like, you and your people can go, you can still hear the mourning in the background.
Like, it was so well done, like heart-wrenching.
And, like, then like the part that brought me to tears is when Moses cracks.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to do this. He didn't want it to be pushed this far.
I think that is what makes his character,
because he truly loves Ramesses.
He loves his people.
Yes.
But to understand, his people aren't just the Jewish. His people are the Egyptians. He grew up there. He knows these people. So it's like, he has this moment after everyone dies and after he sees that his nephew has died, and he just sinks down on the wall and just cries. Yeah. And it's like, it's so emotional because you don't really think of the struggle that Moses himself had. Growing up, when you're taught this story, you're just taught like, God told him to do this and he did it. And then to see that like, this was a struggle for him. He tried every step of the way to get people to be like, listen, you have to do this or else bad things are going to happen. And when people are like, nah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just the devastation that he feels for his people, for both sides of his people.
Yep.
I think was really good.
Yeah. And then we get to like the final act with like the parting of the Red Sea and all that. And there is like one final goodbye, because Moses says goodbye to Ramesses twice in the movie at two very important parts. One is when he leaves Egypt. He says, "Goodbye, brother. I can't stay." And he leaves. And the second is after the Red Sea closes and Ramesses is spat out. All the other soldiers are presumed swallowed by the ocean.
Yeah.
And Ramesses is spat out, and you can hear him screaming as his voice is just like fading into the distance. Moses! He's screaming. And Moses just says, "Goodbye, brother." There's this finality to it. And I'm just like, that is how you bookend a climax.
Yeah, that like it just... I honestly don't think that there was one part I didn't like.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
I was confused
I have slight nitpicks about like...
I was confused about some of the story, but that's, again, due to my lack of education on certain aspects of the story, like Aaron.
Right.
And his sister. So, like, those things I just didn't know because I was never taught. So I was like, wait a minute. If it's the firstborn, like, why is it Moses and not Aaron? Like, that changes things. But then once I like looked it up, I'm like, oh, okay, you know, they stay pretty true to the story elements.
This is one of my favorite animated movies of all time, and honestly, I could go so far as to say one of my favorite movies of all time. I will continue to rewatch this film every once in a while just to appreciate good storytelling, to motivate me to write characters that good, to appreciate just 2D animation at its finest.
It's stunning.
Like, this was
like,
back in, I believe, 1999. And
yeah,
it was
if you
still
have any
beautiful.
appreciation for art and animation and storytelling and you haven't watched this, do yourself a favor and a service and watch it.
Every
like, I'm sure you can go to a thrift store or like an old, you know, game store and find it on VHS for pretty cheap, or even DVD for pretty cheap. So do yourself a favor and watch it.
I would love for this movie to be re-released in theaters. Ooh. I will be first in line.
That'd be insane.
I need to see this on like that.
We'd have to go to like an
Cinemark
adults only. Because I'm not going to be there with some kids watching another movie on their iPad.
Well,
like last time.
We shall see. So yes, this is easily a part of the family for me.
Oh, yeah.
Any final thoughts before we come to a close? And I highly recommend, if you haven't watched Prince of Egypt, check it out. It doesn't matter your faith. It doesn't matter your background.
Yeah, and
that's a good story.
And that is in all seriousness,
animation,
and all earnest. You know, it's
a timeless masterpiece.
As somebody that has a complicated relationship with faith, watch it. It's so well done, and halfway through you forget that it's even a story about faith.
Yeah.
It's about family and grief and finding yourself and finding
forgiveness,
your
redemption.
Purpose, and it's so good. It's so good.
Yep. All right, puppers. So that was our thoughts on The Prince of Egypt, a true masterpiece. We'll see you all in the next video, and let us know your thoughts on The Prince of Egypt.
And if you're celebrating Easter or Passover or any other holidays today, happy holidays, and we'll catch you next time. Toodles!